guys, Sullivan Owen here in Philadelphia. I am very excited to start these next few episodes of my 28 days of working on things for my garden. If you saw yesterday's video, I shared my complete and utter disaster of my former potager garden. And that one thing I guess I didn't address in any of these videos about this yet, but you can see it in the footage of what the potager looked like in 2020, is that I had this like greenhouse bubble, a sun bubble. And it was great. It was a couple $100, which pre-2020, that seemed like kind of a lot for a temporary greenhouse. And now, of course, prices have just exploded. The same windstorm that took out both the tree and the arch to my potager design also ripped the sun bubble off, ripped the loops that were pounded into the ground with landscape stakes. It like ripped the whole thing off and actually blew off down the street, which those are moments when I wish that I had a camera person that could just like follow me around while I'm trying to get this gigantic 12-foot diameter bubble back up the street so that I could take the poles out. And I had to throw it away. It was irreparably damaged. I wish you guys could see, besides my pet flamingo, Flossie, who lives in my office, and she has like a whole backstory that I might be able to link it below. I think my blog, my old blog, still exists from when blogs were a thing on websites. And then the other, my other companion is my cat Muppet, who sits on an ottoman next to me as my little coworker. I love that she does that because she was my studio cat. And she made being at the studio during some really difficult times, like the middle years of my business, were really emotionally taxing. And we got her because there was a mouse problem at the studio, which was just an old warehouse building. But having her, she became like a therapy cat. And then when I moved my business home, she moved home. And she really just does stick with me. I think she likes the working hours. So, jumping into, here's a clip of what the current state of affairs in the potager is. And I did some quick sketching in yesterday's video about kind of the overall like rough shape of what I'd like things to be here. But today I'm gonna specifically take you through kind of pulling together a quick idea board. You can use any application that you would like for this. I happen to have recorded myself doing this in PowerPoint. PowerPoint's kind of an underrated program. It's got the user friendliness of all the Word and page document type of software with some pretty interesting photo tools that let you not have to jump into Photoshop and things like that. So PowerPoint is what we're using here, and I'm gonna speed this up. I want to say the whole thing of pulling images together, I probably spent maybe around 20-25 minutes. You could certainly work on this for as long as you wanted. Obviously, I was making a video for this. And some of these are brand new images, and some of them are ones that I have saved, but I'm pulling them in. I just found them all through Google Images. So as we kind of go through, I'll try to give you some of the keywords that I use to find some of these. One thing that I think is helpful to do when you're organizing any kind of mood board is, rather than try to cram so many images onto like one page, like more like, I guess, a vision board, is to kind of split them out by categories. So I made for myself, for this specific series, an overall inspiration. I have expressed now in a couple of videos how important I think a greenhouse shed combination would be for solving some of my issues with storing things in my garden, and especially tools and extra pots and materials and things like that. Planting is obviously very important to me. And one of the things that spoke to me about the potager concept of gardening, which you can go geek out on the video from 2020 if you want to hear more about the history of potager and the style of design. But one of the things that I think is so important about this concept for both growing food and beautiful things is how the idea is that this garden space holistically feeds you, not just for the soup pot, which is what potager means, but kind of gives you some joy and makes you excited to go into your vegetable garden, which frankly, the way mine looks right now, it's the exact opposite feeling. I don't know what the French word for run in the other direction is, but that's basically what my garden is saying right now. So incorporating flowers into the plantings, adding more garden space around the vegetable beds and things like that, adding more flowers into the specific vegetable beds, whether that's things that are helpful from a pest management perspective, like nasturtium or marigolds, which are really helpful to plant your tomatoes and things like that. That's all really important to me. And then I'm very into groupings of containers. And I feel like now that I'm working with the full 1,100 square feet of this space, that there's more room for some grand planter pot combinations. So plantings are going to be really important, whether that's groupings of pots and planters, like how I have grown my strawberries. I've used an assortment of different pots to create my own version of a large strawberry tower. I don't really like the strawberry tower, like the belly jar look of like a strawberry planter, and not knocking how effective things like green stalks and those things are. It's too functional looking for me. I can totally see why they work and why people love them. It's just, it doesn't have enough aesthetic appeal to me. I call this page vignettes, which goes back to long ago. I left art school to work in visual merchandising for a series of retailers. I did that for almost 18 years and worked for all different kinds of companies around the country, and eventually became like a director of visual merchandising. But this word vignette is something that came up when I was first working for old school Urban Outfitters, like mid-90s Urban Outfitters. And they referred to vignettes as like a vignette in a retail plan, I guess, is, you know, a mannequin, an outfit, a table with accessories, and the clothing on racks around it. That's kind of the simplest way. And so vignette became this word that I always associated with these like little moments. And I still use it now in my floral design and environmental design practices. Like I want to create these little moments of magic and discovery where an idea kind of comes together. So I labeled this page vignette. You could also call this, if you were not as old as me, you could probably call it like vibes or aesthetic or what have you. But these are just kind of things, elements, textures, the way things come together that I think is interesting. If you are just joining me, you can go check out some of the other work that I've done on this garden. But I have I would say my taste is in the contemporary meets wild and overgrown. I don't think that I would ever describe anything that I do as particularly rustic, nor is it starkly modern. I'm always going for, in my weddings, this kind of like relaxed elegance. And I don't know that I would call my garden elegant, but I do know that my sense of color and things like that are fairly sophisticated and artistic. So vignette can be kind of anything. I love this idea of having an herb wall, a vertical planter. I have this like kind of pot planter tower in distressed wood. Unfortunately blew over in that same windstorm and I never put it back, but I kind of like experimenting. I like this idea of like labeling things. I want signage for the garden, but not in a like, it's wine o'clock kind of way. I'm not knocking that aesthetic. I'm wearing a graphic t-shirt. I did a wedding in Bozeman, Montana over the summer, and I really loved it. So I'm not knocking like graphic representations of ideas or feelings. It's just, I'm just not like a signage person. I don't know that there's enough cynical word art out there for me and my personality. I would describe my style that way. Like, my house is painted a contemporary color. My fence is a contemporary design, but I still really love natural twig trellises. I like old wrought iron work. I also like the juxtaposition of like an old garden gate with a modern contemporary rusted steel planter. So that's my personal style. And so one of the things that I think is so special about gardening, less so in floral design, because floral design for me is about it's kind of like cooking for other people. Whereas my garden is really for myself, or trying to make my husband happy with all my design choices, which he doesn't always agree with. So I think that, to me, vignette as a concept is those little moments that really bring you joy. And what better place to try to incorporate that than into a potager, which is really not just about feeding you, but feeding you on the whole, feeding you creatively, artistically, just bringing you moments of joy. It's always nice when you're working on inspiration to pull from your own work. This is my fall 2020 planners, which were some of my favorite groupings out there. This concept of having a very small footprint building, like I'm planning for my greenhouse shed combo, I would like to make it as functional as possible without letting it get huge, because as much as I'm aware that I have a very large garden for being in a city, I have a 1/4 acre clear lot for my garden, I don't want to devote more than a 10 by 20 space for this building, so that I can maximize production and beauty all around it. I could fit a 40 by 25 structure, but then I wouldn't have any space for planting anything around it. And then, I'm just building a new like 3-car garage if I'm going to that dimension, which is not in the budget and not necessary for what I'm trying to do. So to me, of all the areas that I've been pulling imagery from, vignette was maybe one of the more challenging. I don't know that I have fully been able to find images that entirely capture what's going on up here. We're going to do some drawing in the next episode, where I'm going to kind of work on dividing up the space, making sure that the footprint that I have in mind for the greenhouse shed, which is 10 by 20, is the right size, and that I can fit kind of some of my existing things. I already have 7 4x4 raised beds, and it's really important to me to be able to use them. I don't know that I'm going to be able to make space to add more, but I am looking at how I can creatively incorporate more in-ground planting space into this area. I don't want it all to be raised beds, and I don't want it to, I think I said this back when I started introducing myself as a channel that was more focused on gardening. I'm not into straight rows of anything. That's coming up next. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe. I am working on 28 days of videos around my garden. I actually think we have a few warm days coming up, and our snow was melted by this torrential rain. So I might actually even be able to get out there and start cleaning some stuff up, which I've never done one of those cleaning videos. Mostly because if you watched my things to do in the garden video, I confess to being really terrible about cleaning up after myself with projects. But maybe it would be fun to turn the camera on and at least clean out the trash from this potager area. So next up, let's get drawing, and I will see you guys in the next one.